Welcome back to the best of the best in horror countdown 2020. This is where we count down the best 31 horror movies all through October that were released from October 1st, 2019 until September 30th, 2020. Let's get spooky. Welcome back to the official Best of Horror 2019-2020 countdown on MLMiller Frights, a part of the Kings of Horror Network. I'm MLMiller. I want to urge you to give this video a like, share with your buddies across the web, click subscribe to this channel, and don't forget to ring that bell for notifications. If you're in the Chicago area and love horror, you have no excuse not to head out to the Chi-Town Movies Drive-In every day in October for 31 nights of horror presented by the Music Box of Horrors at the Drive-In. There will be late shows Sunday through Thursday and double features every Friday and Saturday night. In addition, every weekend is themed. There's Grindhouse Fridays, Rip-Off Saturdays, and Sequel Sundays. Tonight they're playing Alien and Galaxy of Terror, two horror masterpieces in my book. Look below for a link to the schedule, where to get tickets, and directions to this awesome horror event. Now on with the countdown. At number 29, The Rental was released on July 21st, 2020. It's available on demand and digital download from IFC Midnight. The Rental was directed by Dave Franco and written by Franco, Joe Swanberg, and Mike Demski. One of the many House by the Water style horror films released this year, The Rental features a quartet of young, pretty people. The guests Dan Stevens as Charlie, Community's Alison Brie playing Michelle, Shameless's Jeremy Allen White as Josh, and A Girl Walks Home at Night's Sheila Vand as Mina. This group rent a house by the beach from Taylor, the always awesome character actor Toby Huss. Taylor immediately rubs the group of youngsters the wrong way for renting to Charlie, the white guy, Stevens, an hour after denying Mina, the Persian woman, Vand, the house for the weekend. This is something Mina isn't afraid to confront Taylor about. This awkward altercation makes for an uneasy beginning to the trip, which is celebrating the success of Josh and Mina's business. Complications arrive when the lines between the two couples blur during their first night of partying, and some lewd activity is caught on video that they discovered wired into the shower head. What transpires is not only the destruction of these two couples' relationships, but their lives as well, as it seems someone is stalking them from the shadows. The Rental is terrifying thanks to some complex relational issues from writers Dave Franco, brother of James, and Mighty Joe Swanberg. The story pulls you in close before showing you its teeth. Even before the creepy guy in the old man mask in the shadows appears, the horror of self-destructive relationships is put front and center. Paranoia and tension reach a fever pitch by the midway point when they all find out there are video recordings of their shenanigans somewhere as they tear the house apart trying to find them. Franco and Swanberg, with co-writer Mike Demski, really know how to develop fascinating characters who may not be easy to like, but are mesmerizing to watch trip over themselves due to their own faults. Dave Franco directs this tight little slasher stalker film and manages to prolong the inevitable confrontation between the quartet and the man in the shadows to agonizing lengths. Once shit does start heading fanward, Franco isn't afraid of being blunt and brutal with the violence. There are quite a few scenes that pay off fantastically, especially if you haven't been spoiled by the trailer. Franco pulls a Hitchcock here as he shows the horror approaching an unsuspecting victim, which only makes the violent punctuation to the scene more resonant. The Rental is another slow starter. I'm sure some might disagree with the pace, but I was really impressed by the patient hand Franco displayed with doling out the terrors. The ending might leave some cold, but I found it to be all the more chilling in the callous and hopeless way everything wraps up. Another actor turns filmmaker with Random Acts of Violence, which was released on August 20th, 2020. This one is streaming exclusively on SHUDDER. and it's directed and written by Jay Baruchel from a comic book by Jimmy Palmiotti and Justin Gray. In Random Acts of Violence, an indie comic book creator, Todd, played by Jesse Williams, has risen to fame writing and drawing a violent horror comic book called Slasher Man. But just as Slasher Man is nearing its last issue, Todd gets writer's block and doesn't know how to end this long-running tale. So Todd decides to go on a trip for inspiration with his publisher Ezra, played by Jay Baruchel, his eager assistant Aurora, name Wilson, and his girlfriend Kathy, played by Jordana Brewster, who happens to be writing a story based on the victims of the I-90 killer, which is the serial killer that Slasher Man is based upon. Just when Todd announces the end of his series, it appears the real I-90 killer is out of retirement and following Todd and company on their road trip, leaving a trail of dismembered bodies and blood spattered everywhere. Now, I think if Jay Baruchel wants to have a career in making horror films, he will be quite successful. Baruchel has a large appetite for carnage, filling Random Acts of Violence with all sorts of horrifying imagery, bodily dismemberment, and complex emotional situations the characters have to get through in order to survive. Bodies are twisted and mutilated, much blood is shed, and while there have been 1,000,001 slasher films, Baruchel manages to keep everything interesting and fresh, with plenty of action and character parsed throughout. Baruchel also takes a lot of pages from comic books themselves, not only coloring the film in bold and bright colors, but utilizing specific colors such as orange, green, and purple. Now, I know from reading about Stan Lee and Jack Kirby that these specific colors in particular make for a disturbing and uneasy effect when seen. That's why all of Spider-Man's villains sport greens, oranges, and purples. I also know Baruchel to be a comic book fan, so I'm sure that he knows about the color scheme as well, as he paints practically the entire film in this off-putting palette in order to subliminally cause discomfort for the viewer. It's a bit of fun color theory, but it works really well. Baruchel is smart enough to cast some exceptionally talented actors in Random Acts of Violence. While Jesse Williams does have supermodel good looks, as does his girlfriend, played by Jordana Brewster, both actors are good enough to make us see the soul beneath that perfectly moisturized skin. Williams is put through the emotional ringer in this one and does a fantastic job of conveying a broad array of emotions that you don't see in your typical slasher flick. Baruchel himself is rather restrained in his role of Ezra, toning down the neurosis that has become his calling card in most of his roles. Maybe it's because he was so focused on the filmmaking, but he is definitely not the comic relief he usually plays here. If Random Acts of Violence has a weakness, it's when it tries to be heady about the violence it depicts on screen. The film is an adaptation of a comic book by Jimmy Palmiotti and Justin Gray, and it tries to pose a philosophical argument about the depiction and often glorification of violence in society and media, while at the same time, it drenches the viewer in more blood and gore and violence that one would see in 10 typical 80s slasher films. It's an interesting argument, and one worth delving into, but the story doesn't even try to answer any of those questions, as the final act simply devolves into a wanton bloodbath. All of that bloodshed washes away any argument had in the film prior, and makes the lengthy scenes discussing the subject feel somewhat meaningless by the gory end. Still, for a first-time feature directorial effort, Baruchel delivers a blood-red slashfest that rarely stalls or stops sputtering blood until the final reel. Random Acts of Violence may have failed at conveying a deep message, but it does deliver a gory good time. That'll be it for today. Check back in tomorrow for my next pick on the countdown. Please chime in down in the comments and let me know what you think of these films, how on the nose or mind-numbingly wrong I am, or you can counter with your own list. If you like this video, please pound that thumbs up button. Share this video with your social media addicted pals. If you're looking for written reviews, you can find them on MLMillerWrites.com. Don't forget I have 2 new horror comic book trade paperbacks you should look for. GRAVETRANCERS is out right now in comic shops, and Pirouette, which collects never-before-published issues and will be out in late November, early December with Diamond Order Code APR 201712. And be sure to subscribe to this channel, and please ring that bell for alerts to be the first to see my future videos. Thank you so much for your time, and take care.
You're doomed to live the life you're meant to be, stuck inside your reality.